Thank you, Reverend Norman. My name is Margaret Prescott. And I'm with Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike and also the host of Sojourner Truth on KPFK Radio 90.7 FM. And right off, we'd like to thank the Pacifica Radio Network for not only in Los Angeles, but in the other cities where the station is based for being the media sponsor of this event. We have some speakers that are going to be coming up to you, and I just wanted to briefly say why we wanted to have this event, bringing together support for the California prisoner hunger strikers and justice for Trayvon. You know, after the Zimmerman verdict and protests broke out across the nation, you have a lot more people now talking about the impact of mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline. Because we all know very well that the same criminal justice system that let Zimmerman off, I think it's a 21st century lynching myself, that's my personal view.
All right,
okay,
all right.
Is the same system that allows more black men in prison today that were slaves in 1850. We really got to think about that one. That allows 60% of those in solitary confinement right here in California to be Latino, Hispanic youths. And we know that they want to try and divide our community. But you know what? We're here together. We share a history, alrighty? And we're not going to let them divide us. I also quickly want to say that when you try to bring people together, there are a lot of people and communities together, there are a lot of people who don't want that to happen because they know how strong we are together than when we are apart. So I want to call out today the young Black Panther, Hank, you know who I'm talking about, who was killed in Chicago, alrighty, because he was bringing together Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Hampton, thank you, had a moment there. Chairman Fred Hampton, he was bringing together the black so-called gangs in Chicago with the Puerto Rican gangs, okay, and they shot them down. When Malcolm X was bringing people together, they went after him as well. And when Martin Luther King got real radical, not only against the war, but was talking about the Poor People's Campaign and bringing people together of all races, Native American, black, white people, Latino people together, you know, they went after him also. So we understand that we are a force together, and I just wanted to mention that today because the brothers who are in Pelican Bay Short Corridor, who have called this, there's now been a campaign to try to smear them, okay? And we know that we're not going to stand for it. But these brothers put out a statement that said, we are on hunger strike and today is their 24th day, people. I'll be honest with you, I'm fasting today and I'm already having a hard time, okay? Much less 24 days. They said, we are not only fasting for our 5 basic human rights demands, but we are fasting for prisoners everywhere and for oppressed people everywhere. That is leadership, and it's the kind of leadership that those of us on the outside need. Okay, we don't know how many are refusing food and water right now. They're telling us they're about 600. But if there's 600, if there's 700, if it's 1,000, we have not seen anything like it in California. It is historic. The longest prisoners hunger strike in the history of California and the largest in California. They are standing up for us. And we have to stand with them. Thank you. I'd now like to invite the speakers. People are going to be introducing themselves to save some time. Where is Dolores Canales? We have to start out with a family member. This woman, I'm not supposed to introduce her, but she has been tireless. Her son is in the SHU. And I don't know how Dolores does it. She was in Sacramento yesterday. She is here today, and she is a tremendous inspiration. And then she keeps saying, I'm not an organizer. I'm not. She is fantastic. Dolores Canales.
Thank you very much. My name is Dolores Canales, and I am a co-founder of California Families to Abolish Solitary Confinement. And we could have never have made it this far if it were not for the effort of the hunger strikers from within, and if the effort of the power of the people that have come together to say enough is enough. We stand in truth, and in truth is where the power is, to reveal the oppression, to reveal the injustice, to bring down a system that allows human beings to be held captive in solitary confinement for 30 years at a time.
That's right.
The LA Times put out a story about Todd Asker, that he's a convicted murderer and that he's leading this hunger strike. Well, I am here today, LA Times, to say, tell the story right. He went in at 20 years old as a drug user and theft crimes, and he became a murderer within the California Department of Corrections, because that's what these buildings do. So I am here to speak about the oppression that allows Zimmerman to walk and hold others detained for life on carjacking or crimes where there's not even a victim. I'm here today to speak out about all the injustice. As we come together, together we will move mountains. Thank you.
Ernest Shepard, formerly incarcerated. Ernest, where are you, brother? Come on up here. He's right here.
Come on, Ernest.
Yeah, I was formerly incarcerated. You know, I was formerly incarcerated 45 years. And I'm grateful for these people to come and they call on me and speaking on this day of hunger. You know, speaking on this day of fasting. And bring it to mind, the first time I fasted was in 1965, in August of 1965. I was in Soledad, Owen. That was when they had the Watts riot occurred, and all the brothers fasted. I was there with some beautiful Trayvon Martins, because they ain't even here no more. They were the past Trayvon Martin. The people was Howard Told, Hugo Pinnell, W.L. Nolan, Dodgers across the hallway. Most of these brothers are not here. I'm a miracle that I'm here to be able to come and speak before y'all. You know, that was my first fast. My experience in solitary confinement. 1 year later, I had a fist fight with a guy. They took me through the court system and they gave me the death penalty. And they had me sent up on death row. They condemned death row as cruel and unusual punishment. They need to condemn all these other places as cruel and unusual. We got to get that cruel and unusual connection, man, because sitting up in there is cruel and unusual. I'm a miracle, man. Most people don't make it. You understand? We got to do something about that. I was hearing a little girl really touched my heart. She said, if the system does not respond to us, then we got to create another system. And I'm down with that. And that's why we're here. That gives Trayvon Martin's life a meaning. His meaning is bringing us out. It's connecting to us and causing us to use the energy to create a system, to create something that responds to us and that responds to our youth. So thank you, and that's what I'm here. I'm sharing my voice, I'm sharing my life.
All righty, Virginia Classic.
The National Religious Campaign Against Torture, an interfaith organization, works to confront and end torture in all places, including the torture of prolonged, indefinite solitary confinement. Every faith tradition holds that all persons are endowed with dignity and worth and value. In some faith traditions, that language talks about the sacred in every human being, and that the violation of a human person is a violation of the sacred. In my faith tradition, which is Christianity, My sacred text has these words: remember all of those who are in prison as if you were in prison with them. Remember all who are being tortured as if you yourself are being tortured. And every faith tradition has some version of the golden rule, which is that we treat all persons in the way that we want to be treated. So the National Religious Campaign Against Torture is working to mobilize faith leaders and members of faith communities in California and throughout the United States to demonstrate support for the 5 core demands, to call for a swift, just, humane end to the hunger strike, and to add the voices of faith communities to those voices of the human rights organizations, and especially the families and loved ones who have worked so tirelessly and so courageously so that we can bring the inhumanity of solitary confinement to an end. Thank you.
Is Alex Sanchez in the house? Alex Sanchez.
Alex! Come on, Alex.
Let's go visit Governor Brown's house.
Hi, my name's Alex Sanchez. I work for a youth violence gang intervention program in Los Angeles in the Pico Union area. And what's happening inside Pelican Bay with the agreement to stop hostilities, it falls right into the work that we need to be doing in our community. Ending violence, starting in prison. We can replicate this, but what we see is the repression that's happening to those people that are in leadership to stop this violence in the streets. They're being tortured, they're being put in isolation, incommunicado with their own families and others, to be able to really push a peaceful process in which they already committed themselves with the end of hostilities agreement that they all put into play. In El Salvador, as an example, we're into a 16th month of a truce between the gangs that started in the prison system that has led into the communities, which reduced gang violence and homicides by 52%. By 52%, and it has maintained for 16 weeks. Why? Because the corrections, Department of Corrections, and the government and international organizations are supporting it. And because there is a movement of families just like what you guys are doing here, the familias. It ain't a non-profit moving this. It's a movement of families. That's why we need to push. That's why we need to push as family members. I've been incarcerated too. I know what it is. That's why we need to continue this fight and stop for anybody else dying behind this hunger strike. We need to demand Governor Davis to respond to us, to respond to all of you family members that are here. Governor Brown, sorry about that, lost it for a second. But the same phase, it's the same thing. He needs to be impeached. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish as well. Estamos aquí juntados no como un movimiento de una organización, sino como un movimiento de familias que tienen hijos y familiares en las prisiones, en estos calabozos adentro de las prisiones aquí en California, donde los están torturando, donde los están no solo torturando físicamente, sino psicológicamente. En estos calabozos el 77% de la gente comete suicidio porque a eso lo empujan, a que se vuelvan locos en estos calabozos, donde las Naciones Unidas han dicho que 15 días bajo estas condiciones es una violación a los derechos humanos. Cuando tenemos gente acá por 30 años allá adentro, por 20 años en esas condiciones, necesitamos cambiar. Este movimiento de familias es lo que lo va a lograr. Nunca en la historia de los Estados Unidos ni de California se ha visto una huelga de hambre por 24 días como lo estamos cumpliendo ahora. Es injusto y no podemos dejar que otro más muera como Billy, que murió por esta huelga de hambre. No podemos dejar que eso suceda. En El Salvador, que lo vean como ejemplo, llevan los prisioneros adentro de las prisiones más brutales de El Salvador, se juntaron, hicieron una tregua, al igual como lo han hecho en Pelican Bay con el acuerdo para terminar las hostilidades entre ellos. Allá hubo un apoyo que ha reducido el 50% de homicidios. Sin embargo, acá no ha habido ni un apoyo y nuestros hijos siguen muriéndose en las calles. Nuestros hijos, nuestros primos, nuestros familiares siguen muriéndose. Este movimiento tiene que ser de ustedes y va a ser de ustedes, y tenemos que demandar al gobernador Brown para que cambie esta manera que están torturando a nuestra gente adentro. Gracias.
Sister Judy Vaughn, we're so glad to have everybody here, family members, members of religious communities, activists, all together. Sister Judy Vaughn, Alexandria House.
My name is Sister Judy Vaughn, and I'm a sister of St. Joseph, and I also live and work at Alexandria House, a shelter for homeless families. After the acquittal of George Zimmerman for the murder of Trayvon Martin, one of the women living at Alexandria House, Lonnie, wrote a poem that included these lines. If you were my child, I would cry every day. In my heart would be an empty space. Every time I close my eyes, I would see your face. It would be hard for me to focus on God's amazing grace because of this thing called race makes it okay to hate. We are here today to be part of the hunger for justice and protest the racism that makes it possible to get away with discrimination, racial profiling, and murder. It is not okay to hate. Why are we here? Justice for Trayvon Martin. Why are we here? Justice for Trayvon Martin. After the verdict and the acquittal, women at Alexandria House came to talk about racism. The women living at our house represents more than 6 different cultures and a variety of countries and languages. There were a lot of learnings, but the conclusions were unanimous. This present system, and let me be clear because they might have been being polite because I'm white, this present system, the current white supremacist system, is designed to keep people living in poverty and eventually kill them on the streets or in the prisons. And the system is designed to keep people divided, people seeking justice, so that we don't discover the strength in unity, and even sometimes we kill each other. But we are here today to say no to injustice and division, and that today we hunger for justice. And finally, talking to 2 women on our porch about the demonstration today, I'd just like to share their conversation. One woman said, and people have been kept for years in solitary confinement and treated really bad. The second woman said, how can they do that? The first woman said simply, because they can. But we're here today to say, no, they can't. No, they can't. They cannot keep people in solitary confinement. They cannot treat them inhumanely. The demands of the hunger strikers must be met, and there must be justice for Trayvon Martin. And as a Christian and someone observing Ramadan, we know the power of fasting. We know the power of a hunger strike. We join with them, and thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Sister Judy Vaughn. There are a few notables that are with us here. Haskell Wexler, the award-winning cinematographer, just arrived and is here to share his solidarity with us. The next person I'd like to introduce is Tireless. He's been fasting for the past 24 hours. He's the actor and activist, Mr. Danny Glover.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, every single one of you, for being here this afternoon. Because we're here not only to support our brothers, 30,000 strong, who are on a hunger strike in prisons across the United States, but we're also here to support justice for Trayvon Martin. When we look into the audience and I see so many faces, from Margaret to Mike Farrell to Hank Jones, many faces of men and women who've had a lifetime of fighting for justice. Often when we fight, we're always trying to connect the dots. We're trying to connect the dots. We're told that there's no relationship between this thing or that thing. There's no relationship between the lack of jobs and the growth of the prison industrial complex or the collapse of the educational system. There's no relationship between all that. Yet we constantly have to believe and know that there's a relationship. There's a relationship where power decides that it's going to disenfranchise and disregard a certain group of people. It does that on the state level. It does that as individual vigilantes. It does that in our relationships, that is going to disempower and is going to make people expendable, and the fact that they're not valued. And that's that's the connection that we have to continue to make. We have to continue to make those connections which draw us closer together, which draw us closer together as brothers and sisters. When we talk about the issues of women, we have to draw the connection between the issues of women and the injustice that happens with women, whether in the workplace or in the prison system, or the brutality of women, or the lack of women to have control of their lives. We have to connect those issues to what is happening to all the disenfranchised people who are disenfranchised by structures of control, the pathology of power, structures of control, which determine who we are and where we go and where we end up in life. Whether it's in the part of the prison industrial complex, or whether it's a part of homelessness, or whether it's a part of us losing our minds sometimes over the craziness, we have to continue to make these connections. We are here today specifically for that. Writers have talked about this for the last 2 weeks or so, since the verdict came through of not guilty for Zimmerman. And they've talked about it. We have to understand that those pundits who have talked about it have tried to separate us, to try to say that there's no relationship between the issues of African-American men and Latino men. They tried to say that we don't have anything in common, and yet it is reading this on the wall. Look at this. Understand that as we won't move forward, because we move forward in telling the truth. As Malcolm X said when he talked about jail, we all in jail. Whether we're in solitary confinement or whether we're out on the street, we're in jail. We're in jail because the power defines us and tried to define us and eliminate us in everything. We can take all the things. Everything is as the revelations that come out around the NSA. And what is happening in the NSA in its collection of information on people around there. It's historic. They collected information, enough information to kill Fred Hampton in Chicago in 1969. We know that. Margaret said that. We know that. It is for us at this particular point to put these pieces together and keep growing. Right. Yes, I'm saddened that as I look at these pictures of these extraordinary men, these wonderful men who've been in solitary confinement for 25 years or for 13 years, as my sister Canales, her son has been in Dolores has been in jail. Thank God that she has the courage to form the California families for the abolition of the death penalty, and all those who work on the behalf. This is for the solitary confinement. So take this moment and begin to continue to organize and to continue to organize to get the message out. Some of them are clear. We all read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. We all know that. We see it. It's there. It's systemic. And people don't want to deal with it. More people are reading that book and getting a sense of the pathology of power and how power attempts to diminish our expectations of ourselves, diminish who we can be and who we can be as citizens right here. And we have to take this to the next step. And that next step is to continue to move and to continue to work to have real change. As the brothers say, if the system doesn't work, we have to create a system that works for us. It works for all the people. Because the system in itself does not only simply work for us here, as we reside here in this country. It doesn't work for people around the world in the same way. So let's take all our energy and put forth this. I'm feeling a little weak because I went without eating for 24 hours, and I don't like not eating for 24 hours, but it's the right thing to do. But I'm strengthened by your courage. I'm strengthened by the mothers and family members of men and women who are in solitary confinement. I'm strengthened by the fact that we will win, that we will get California to look at this. These are 5 simple demands. Here are the demands right here, and I looked at them. To end long-term solitary confinement. Abolish the briefing policy and modify gang status. And modify, abolish the debriefing policy and modify gang status criteria. End group punishment and administrative abuse. Provide adequate and nutritious food. And expand and provide constructive programming. This is about human rights. It's about human beings, treated as human beings. It's about mothers and fathers and brothers, too, and sisters. This is what it's about. So we push forward this simple demand. We demand that Governor Jerry Brown tells and says emphatically that the California Prison Association, the California Prison and Rehabilitation Association deal with this and begin to negotiate with these prisoners. We demand that, first of all. That's right. And we demand that we abolish every single stand your ground law in this country. We demand that. We demand that Eric Holder bring charges, federal charges of abuse of civil rights against Zimmerman. We demand that. Those are our demands. They're simple demands of justice of human beings for a society who's trying to rebirth and learn again. Remember how it is to care and to love and to build bills based on that basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Danny Glover. One of the first to sign up when I called Mr. Glover, and he said, Margaret, I'll be there. I'll fly down to LA and I will be there. Thank you, Danny Glover. Mike Farrell is also here to speak with us. Mike Farrell, also tireless. We have one other speaker before Mr. Farrell joins us. We'd like to welcome to the mic Kwasi Nkrumah.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I'm here today on behalf of the Martin Luther King Coalition of Greater Los Angeles. And, you know, we've worked with just about every group that's out here, and I recognize most of you out here today. We were put together to connect those dots and to create a space where we could come together across any political or philosophical differences that we have and engage in joint action. And as has been said by several speakers already, we are in a time where we really must act now for human rights. We must act wherever we are for human rights, because our human rights are under assault at every level, wherever we are today. Any issue, any concern, every aspect of our lives is under assault through institutions and individuals who do not have our best interests at heart. And it's on us to create the conditions to enforce our rights in the world today, for ourselves, for our children, and for our communities. I was down in court today in Inglewood, and the police attempted to block a group of young people who were under charges from entering the courthouse because they didn't like the way that they dressed.
Shame, shame.
Because they felt that a political message was being reflected by how they dressed, but they were letting other people in who were dressed similarly, but who weren't part of that group. And I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to put them in a situation where the judge from the bench would say, oh, they have not shown up for court today. Let me issue a bench warrant from something that was basically a minor charge to be raised up to something that could lead to their incarceration. Because he, in fact, issued out some bench warrants from his bench when we got into the courtroom, and they were running up to the thousands. In one case, I think he said $6,000 on one person, and something like $21,000 in penalties on somebody else who had not shown up. This is the kind of stuff that's going out. They also told me I could not go in because I had shown to be a witness for them in terms of their getting due process from the court, which is something MLK Coalition does for all groups that are up against charges at any time. We've gone to court for everybody who's gotten locked up. And no one has ever tried to prevent the Martin Luther King Coalition from going into a courtroom, least of all a police officer.
Genocide. They're wiping out our...
So I'm saying to say we got in when they got clear that I was going to go after them and sue that city for every penny we could squeeze for violation of our rights. They let us in when they realized that we understood our rights and our power. And this is the message that we're all going to have to get across the board on all the issues that concern our survival. MLK Coalition is calling on all groups during the 50th commemoration of the March on Washington. Whether you're part of MLK or not, we don't care. If you are dealing with civil rights issues, act now, and we will support you. We will try to get other groups to get behind you. When the families of the hunger strikers and the hunger strikers inside the prisons are moving, we all must respond and support them. They're giving it everything that they have. And their defense of their rights is our defense of our rights. And we have to see it that way in regard to all these issues. So I want to thank Margaret and the others who organized this event today. I want to thank the families and the hunger strikers for the example that they are setting for everyone else. We've got to get people up off the couch and turning off their TVs and out from behind their computers and standing up for their human rights again. We think the 50th commemoration of the March on Washington gives us all an excellent opportunity to do that in. So let's generate actions all over the place, around the hunger strike, around the schools, the prisons, the criminal justice system, the unemployment, the racial profiling, Trayvon Martin, all of these cases, and also Marissa Alexander, who should have been protected by that so-called stand your ground law in Florida, and now is doing 20 years for firing a warning shot against her domestic abuser. We want that sister out of jail. And we look forward to working with all of you on all these struggles. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Kwasi. And now our final speaker, we would like to welcome to the mic.
Our final speaker closing this portion of the press conference out is someone who most of you know. Mike Farrell is an actor, a director, a producer, but as you know, he has also been a human rights activist for years and years. And although many of us might remember him as the character from MASH, in our hearts, he is the one who's had a lifelong commitment to end the death penalty and to fight for human rights. So please welcome Mike Farrell.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. First, let me say that this system of ours is a failure. And there's a man standing behind me that I want you to meet because he represents the failure of this system. His name is Frankie Carrillo, and he spent 20 years in California's prisons for a murder he did not commit. Say hello to Frankie Carrillo.
Hi, Frankie.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you all for being here today. You know, I was wrongfully convicted when I was 16 years old of a murder I did not commit, and I spent 20 years of my life in prison until I was able to finally prove my innocence. So I experienced this injustice firsthand, and to be here today to lend my voice to those who don't have a voice because they've been stripped away from it brings me a lot of joy to hear today. Thank you all for being here, and I specifically want to support those men who've been sort of forgotten about, those in San Quentin's death row called the Adjustment Center. there's about 25 men who've been in the shoe on death row. So those men also need some attention to bring the cause, along with Tehachapi, Corcoran, Pelican Bay. But every single person, not only in the shoe, but every single person in prison who suffer, they definitely need our support. So thank you so much.
Danny mentioned Eric Holder. Eric Holder is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States of America. Last week, Eric Holder had to guarantee the people of Russia that he would not torture or kill Edward Snowden if they sent him back to the United States. Now that embarrasses, it's got to embarrass Eric Holder, but by God it should embarrass all of us, that somebody had to say he will not be tortured or killed if he is sent back to the United States. And the reason that he had to do that is that the demented leadership of George Bush and Dick Cheney has made torture and killing of people who are incarcerated, people who are helpless, a byword for the United States of America. So the people around this country and the people around this world understand that torture is no longer verboten. Torture is part of the United States of America. And that cannot be acceptable to us. My friend, Juan Mendez, with whom I worked many years at Human Rights Watch, is now the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Torture. Juan Mendez says that 15 days of solitary confinement results in scientifically and medically recognized changes in an individual human being. 15 days of solitary confinement. We are putting people in this state in solitary for 15 years, for 20 years, for 28 years. We're for 2 years, for any years. We are sinking beneath the tide of ugliness that has been heaped upon us as a people, while those in power would have us believe that they are trying to protect our rights by doing the egregious and ugly things they're doing. What Juan Mendez says is solitary confinement is torture. Recognize that solitary confinement is torture and do away with solitary confinement. Now, you know, there are, according to studies, there are, in segregated housing of one form or another that amounts to solitary confinement, there are over 80,000 people in the United States confined in those kinds of conditions. 2 of them are still part of the Angola 3, having been in Angola, Louisiana prisons for 40 years. Now, this is a disgusting fact that the United States of America should hang its head in shame about. But instead, there are people who would insist that these people deserve to have the treatment that they are getting. They deserve it because they are the worst of the worst. Well, let me tell you something about the worst of the worst. There was a man named Jesus who said it was not the worst of the worst, it was the least among us. And what did he say about the least among us? He said, the way you treat the least among us is the way you treat me. Now, for those people, and I hear a lot about these people who believe this is a Christian nation, or people who are, the majority of our citizens are Christians. If that's the case, then where are you? Where are the Christians who are demanding? Where are the Christians who are demanding that the least among us be treated as human beings? That the least among us be treated as worthy of the attention of the rest of us? I would say to you, I was raised in this city. I was raised here a long time ago, and when I was a kid, we used to be told by television, by radio actually, when I was a kid, and later by television, that there were heroes, and those heroes stood up for truth, justice, and the American way. Well, it is a shame and an embarrassment to me that today the slogan should be changed to truth, justice, or the American way. We cannot allow this country to be traduced by people who only believe in power and only believe in having their way. This cannot be tolerated. They say that Billy Sell, the authorities will tell you that Billy Sell committed suicide. The strikers will tell you that Billy Sell was part of the strike, asked for medical attention, was refused it, and died. I would say to you, what the hell is the difference? Billy Sell is dead because people put him in a place where he, if he committed suicide, was so reduced in his sense of himself, his sense of humanity, that he would end his life as a statement about this system. If that's the case, then you wear it, those of you in authority in this country. Where are you, Governor Brown? Where are you? It seems to me that we have work to do. We have work to do in this country. And one of the things we have to do is, as Danny and everybody else has said, is get ourselves together. Stand up. Demand our rights. Recognize the fundamental humanity, the fundamental decency in every human being, no matter what he or she has ever done in life. Allow training, allow programs in prison, allow people who go to prison to have an opportunity to learn something so that when they come out they have some hope, rather than spending many, many years in solitary confinement and having their lives wrecked before they come back out on the streets and try and figure out what to do, how to be a productive citizen. We should be providing hope. This should be the nation that people look up to because it is a beacon of hope, and instead we have become the merchants of death. We cannot accept that. God bless you for being here.
Powerful, powerful words as we wrap up this part of our program. Thank you, Mike Farrell. Thank you, Danny Glover. You know, these are people that could be sitting somewhere, you know, sipping a margarita, you know, and relaxing, and instead they are out here with us. Thank you. We are going to open up. We're going to be having a speak out, and folks are going to be making some noise, but I'm so glad that Mike Farrell talked about Billy Guerrero Sell, because we found out only this past weekend, I think, that he's passed away in solitary confinement. And this sister, Jerry Silva, let's give it up for Jerry. There's so many people who are here. Hank Jones from the San Francisco 8 is here, and we know that they've been through hell. Well, Jerry was sure to find a piece of artwork of Billy Guerrero Sell and blew it up. This is the humanity of the man who lost his life alone in solitary confinement, and then prison officials didn't even say anything to the negotiators on behalf of the California prisoner hunger strikers about his death until days after they knew that he was already dead, and they thought that nobody would care. But somebody cares, right? Y'all hear me? Somebody cares. Every life is of value. What I'd like for us to do now, we had a moment of silence. I'd like for us to make some noise for Billy as his spirit is here with us. Make some noise, people. Let's hear it for Billy. Guerrero Sell, presente.
Presente.
Thank you. Thank you. All righty. So the formal part of our program is we finished part 1, but we have a part 2. We know that members of the press may want to go in and speak with some of our presenters who are still here. Alex is here, and some folks are back here. But there's a sister, I don't know where she is, up-and-coming young organizer who we want to kick off our speak out. We're asking people, we've invited a few people to kick out the speak out. Bilal, we know you got something to say. Patrice is here. Then we'd like y'all to hold some signs, let people know on the street that are driving by why we're here. We would also like the family members, if they want to share something with us, to come on up and do that. So this is the people's rally, okay? So Patrice is up-and-coming young organizer. She works on behalf of abuses going on in the jails in LA County, taking on the Sheriff's Department. And she's also with a group of young people, Justice for Trayvon, LA. Patrice.
Hey everybody, thank you Margaret and all the folks that have been organizing around ending the use of solitary confinement, and I would also argue ending the use of caging people across California and the United States of America.
That's it, the whole thing.
I just want to take a moment to switch it up a bit. We've been kind of standing here listening to different speakers. If I could just have everybody take a moment to close your eyes. Everybody, if you could just close your eyes. Let me get the whole team. And now I want us to, each one of us, to imagine ourselves inside of a cell. Some of us don't have to imagine because we've been there already, but some of you do. Okay, now I want you to imagine the concrete walls inside those cells. Now I want you to imagine being there for about 5 minutes. Can I get everybody's attention? Now I want you to imagine being there for about an hour. Now I want you to imagine being there for 24 hours, for months, for years. No contact with your family members. The only contact you have is with the guards. The only contact you have is violent contact. I want you to imagine being there for 15 years. I want you to imagine for being there for 20 years. Now I want you to imagine that the rest of the world has forgotten about you. That you no longer are a part of humanity. Everybody open your eyes. That is not true for us right now because we are out here on the streets. Every single one of us has an impact to say to California, to say to the people inside, even if they can't necessarily hear us, that we will not stand for solitary confinement, that we will not stand for the use of the shoe, that we will not stand for black and brown bodies to be the sacrifice for this country. Every single one of us on the outside has an opportunity to show up for yourself and bring others along for this ride to end one of the most egregious acts this country has ever partaken in, aside from slavery. Every single one of us has the opportunity to speak up, to speak out, and to say, California, United States of America, we do not stand for this. We demand something more than justice. We demand reparations for every single family member that has suffered from the impacts of caging, that has suffered from the impacts of solitary confinement. We can't take back those years. We can't give those years back. People have lived their lives in solitary confinement, and their loved ones have passed. Their children have passed. Their wives, their husbands, their friends. The whole world has gone without them. And we've watched it, y'all. We've watched it. We've participated in that. We've allowed the police to surveil our neighborhoods and our communities. We've allowed the police and mass incarceration, the PIC, to destroy our lives in the name of, quote, freedom and democracy. That is a lie. And that lie needs to end today. The lie must end today. So I'm asking every single one of you, heart to heart, human to human, how are you going to show up? How are you going to ensure that your loved one is not caught up in the traps of mass incarceration?
With a voice.
How are you going to stand up? How are you going to make sure that when the police is called in our neighborhoods, that we're going to actually blockade that and say, no, we can handle this. We have to have the imagination enough to stop policing, surveilling, to stop mass incarceration. So I'll repeat my name. It's Patrice Cullors. I represent the Coalition to End Sheriff Violence in LA Jails, as well as the Justice for Trayvon Martin and LA Collective. Thank you so much.